I don't know about you, but I am ready for COVID to be done. Probably like you, we've been wanting that for many months before now, but especially now as we stand on the edge of spring, as we begin to imagine our summer plans, as we get vaccinated and hear so much of the good news of the possibility of returning to some kind of normalcy. So it's important that we keep up with that understanding and we keep up with that feeling that the congregation is feeling as we go into our next phase of planning and executing our worship plan. Starting on May 2nd through August 31st is our next season of worship planning and the ways that we will begin to enter into occupancy in the building and in person as we transition into these post-COVID days. Today I'm going to share with you some quick data that we've learned from our post-COVID readiness survey. We had over 130 folks. That's almost 1 in 3 people who formerly worshiped in the sanctuary on a Sunday morning here at Arvada United Methodist Church. That's an incredible response to a survey. And I want to share with you just a couple of the highlights from this survey and what we're learning and hearing about our readiness to enter into in-person and in-building experiences in addition to sustaining our online presence for worship. Also, I'm going to end this brief video with an invitation to look at our worship menu, a menu of options depending on your readiness, a menu of options for how you can choose to worship with Arvada United Methodist Church from May 2nd through August 31st. And just like we have been doing throughout this COVID journey, there will be more information and more education about what we need to be doing and planning for fall and winter of 2021 as we move through this next season of worship readiness and preparing ourselves to be more in person, more in building, and sustaining our online presence. Let's take a look first at some of the learnings that we have from our COVID readiness survey. So the good news is that we had over 130 responses on our readiness survey, but most of those responses were people over 60 years old, which is a large part of our congregation. So we want to continue to hear from voices of our younger families and youth and others who also have a lot to tell us about their readiness. But of those folks who did respond, and we're so grateful for each of your responses, over 70% of the respondents are already fully vaccinated. That's great news. And during our experience of COVID, the preferred worship experiences that you have enjoyed have been our online services that have been available every Sunday morning at 8:00 a.m. and our parking lot outdoor services throughout the late summer and fall of 2020. This will be a model that will sustain and continue in our worship menu for the spring and summer this year. Here's another interesting learning, that adults attending small groups at times other than Sunday morning has increased over double. Before COVID, we had about 15% of the respondents tell us they attended small groups like a Bible study or a small group learning experience, and now over 39% have participated in these learning experiences, like maybe an Advent study or a Lenten study or our Women in Transition group. Over 39% of folks are now participating. That's great news. So how ready are you to transition back to in-building, in-person? This was a key question for this survey. And it tells us a lot about how we are all in different places. 37% of you said, I'm ready to start worshiping in person and in building now with full protocols of making sure we are masked, socially distanced, and not singing in corporate settings. While 50% of you said, I am ready to come back into the building once I get my vaccine and Jefferson County lifts its safety protocols. That will take us much further into the late summer, potentially late fall. And so already with this picture, we understand that there are people in all places of readiness, and we're going to need to accommodate that with our worship planning. Of the 36 of respondents who said they preferred online worship, they are telling us that they want to continue to make that their primary worship experience, even post-COVID. And why are they interested in this, you might wonder? Well, they enjoy online worship and they enjoy the flexibility of worshiping another day of the week. This tells us a whole lot about the impact of our online experience this past year and how we will want to sustain that in our worship menu for those who are geographically far from Arvada, those who travel frequently, or those who just prefer the online worship experience to being in person and in building. This is a really interesting part of our survey that we learned. What would you like to see that we started during COVID that you would like us to see continue post-COVID? These are just some of the ways that we have learned and become creative in the ways we have reached people in new ways through COVID. Take a look at some of these options that people want to continue and think about the ways these options have also impacted you this past year. Finally, here's the AUMC worship menu that will take us from May through August that seeks to oblige the different readiness that different people in our congregation have, as well as an interest in finding ways to continue to do our worship in meaningful and effective ways. Which one of these on the worship menu will you choose? Each one of these worship options will still observe all safety protocols, regardless of whether we're in building, online, or in person outdoors. Which of the worship menu will you choose? The first will be an online recorded service, just like we have been doing, uploaded at 8:15 a.m. on YouTube each Sunday morning. The second option would be Sunday morning service in the Fellowship Center at 8:15 a.m. This is an opportunity for those who are ready to enter in building to come to a space where we can spread out, more socially distanced, and be on hard surface chairs that help us to refrain from having too much germ transmission. At this service, we will actually view the recorded service, but we will also have a time of prayer and fellowship with one another. However, until COVID protocols are lifted in Jefferson County, we will not be serving coffee or donuts or snacks. You may bring your own coffee with you, but we ask that you refrain from eating in that space so we can continue to make it as safe and healthy as it can be. Our third option will be a Sunday morning outdoor parking lot service at 9:45 a.m., just a little earlier than you've been practicing coming at 10 o'clock. This 45-minute service will be very similar to the parking lot services that we had last year, and we're also going to have a set-apart seating area for people who want to bring lawn chairs and other chairs to be seated more in a congregational setting with cars parked behind them for folks that wish to remain in their cars. Children activities and learning for children, youth, and some adults who gather in small groups will happen after this service. So this is the reason that we are going to have this service at 9:45 instead of our usual 10 o'clock time. Finally, the fourth option is to view the Sunday morning outdoor service through live stream at 9:45 on YouTube. This is an opportunity for you to participate in the live service while also enjoying the opportunities that you have to remain at home or the places where you're vacationing or visiting throughout the summer. We're confident that with this worship menu, you can find one or maybe multiple ways to worship with us at Arvada United Methodist Church as we seek to be responsive to the readiness of our congregation and our community while always holding those values of health and welfare and safety as we gather as God's people in each of these meaningful ways. While we have 4 options for worship, we are one congregation. And we continue to celebrate the ways God is at work through the ways we worship, learn, serve, and grow in grace and faith together.